science that proves the top 5 candidates for intermittent fasting. I wanted to do some due diligence and figure out for you who would be the ideal candidate for intermittent fasting. Now, I broke this down outside of just the fat loss rule. And what I mean by that is we all know that intermittent fasting is great for losing weight and losing body fat. So I didn't want to include that as a general candidate because that would be pretty vague and kind of boring. Okay, we already know intermittent fasting is great for fat loss, like bar none, probably the best way to lose fat. So I wanted to look at it from some different angles. Lifestyles, like who are the best people that should try intermittent fasting? Like why is it going to benefit them the most? So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Please do hit that red subscribe button, you won't be disappointed, and then hit that little bell icon. And when you hit that bell icon, make sure you turn on all notifications, not just personalized notifications. So you always get that little ding when I post a new video. Jumping right in. The first person that is a great candidate for intermittent fasting is the person that wants to build muscle while staying lean. You see, we have this thought process that with intermittent fasting, we go these periods of time without eating, and that's going to make it so we lose muscle. I will be the first to tell you from my own experience that intermittent fasting has been the only dietary pattern that's worked for me in terms of being able to build muscle while staying lean. I've tried other things, and I've tried eating 6 meals per day, and I can build muscle, maybe even a little bit faster, but I end up putting on a lot of fat with it, and I don't like that. Okay, so with intermittent fasting, you have some things that are working in your body in your favor to build more muscle. So for example, what's going on is the longer that you go without eating, it makes it so that when you do eat, you have a stronger, let's call it a pro-growth signal. It's like you've stretched a rubber band so far, then all of a sudden you let it go, boom, it's got a lot more velocity the longer that you stretch it, right? The further that you stretch it. It's kind of that way with your body. It's like a rebound effect. So if you can have your diet controlled when you do break your fast, you can actually build a lot more muscle via intermittent fasting while utilizing the fasting period to stay quite lean. See, it all has to do with insulin sensitivity. Because we're not eating for a period of time, our body's insulin sensitivity just increases. We get way more sensitive to insulin because we're not eating. And then when we do eat, our body activates, of course, an insulin spike, but it also activates what's called mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, which is what is sort of the anabolic signaling within our body to build muscle and to grow. Now, we don't want mTOR activated all the time because then it suppresses longevity things that are good for our general health and things that are good for fat loss. But we do want it activated at specific times. So what intermittent fasting does is it takes the person that wants to build muscle and stay lean and gives them a very finite amount of time to work with, but a very powerful amount of time. So if you can be strategic about it, where you break your fast shortly after your workout, then you can capitalize on some massive nutrient absorption. Now, the other thing that we have to look at with this is ketones. You may not be doing a ketogenic diet, but like it or not, while you're intermittent fasting, you are producing ketones. Okay? Ketones are produced when we don't have food in the system and our body runs on its own stored body fat. We want that. Now, these ketones are extremely anti-catabolic, and what that means is they stop the breakdown of muscle tissue. They protect, they act as a buffer. Now, this is great if you're trying to build muscle, because then when it comes down to breaking your fast, you already have a little bit of a muscle-preserving buffer. Think of it like this. Normally, when you eat, a certain portion of the calories that you eat and a certain portion of the protein that you eat goes to sort of filling the bucket of just preventing muscle breakdown. And the rest of the protein and the rest of the calories can go to potentially building muscle. Well, imagine that you already have this ketone buffer preventing muscles from breaking down. It means that every bit of protein that you do take in can actually get utilized and help you build muscle. But guess what? You had this wonderful fasting period prior to eating that allowed you to burn fat too. That's why I love intermittent fasting and why I can maintain muscle with it. Anyhow, let's move on to the next. Do you travel? Are you on the road a lot? Are you jet setting all over the place? Maybe you're a business person. Maybe you just travel a lot. Maybe you just are a travel vlogger. I don't know. Okay, with traveling, fasting works phenomenally well because it allows your body to reset its circadian rhythm. Now, if you've traveled, you know that it's hard to keep your weight in check when you're traveling. It really is. Things just happen. You're like, why am I gaining weight? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that our circadian rhythm is out of whack, so our hormones are just out of whack. Remember, our hormones go alongside our circadian rhythm, and if our circadian rhythm gets jacked up, so do our hormones, which means so does our waistline. Here's what's interesting. We often think that the circadian rhythm only has to do with our body's perception of light, right? When it's light out, we're awake. When it's dark out, we go to sleep. Well, That is to one degree. That is one very important factor. Now, science is starting to show that our meal availability and food availability could be just as strong as a factor. What that means is when we eat and when we don't eat sends a similar signal to what's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus portion of our brain for our circadian rhythm. So when we wake up and it's light, sure, the suprachiasmatic nucleus gets a signal that says, wake up, circadian rhythm, cycle, yeah. Okay, but guess what? The timing of our food does the same thing. Okay, if we stop eating, then the brain will start to get the signal, maybe this person is going to sleep. Maybe this is their circadian rhythm. Okay, now it all has to do with peripheral tissues. You see, our liver actually has signaling mechanisms too. Our liver can sense when we're taking in food and therefore send another signal to the brain just like light would. So normally light goes straight to the brain and activates something known as PER1 or PER2. Well, food activates PER1, PER2, but indirectly through peripheral tissues like the liver. My point in saying this is fasting helps reset this. Now, there's some recent evidence coming out of Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry. Okay, now what they're looking at is a specific gut peptide hormone. Now, this is going to get a little complex, but I'm going to make it very, very simple just so that it's easy for the masses with this video. I'll do more in-depth videos on this later on if you want to learn more about it. Basically, they were looking at something known as oxyntomodulin. And this oxyntomodulin is a gut hormone that is released when we eat outside of our normal eating times. Okay, so the simple point is that if you're eating at the time you normally eat, let's say you normally eat at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. Okay, if you were to eat at those times, you would not have a big release of this oxyntomodulin. Okay, no big deal. But if you were to randomly eat at 3 p.m., then you would have a release of oxyntomodulin. And what researchers are finding is that this oxyntomodulin's job is to start kick-starting the body to reset its circadian rhythm. So in some ways, we find that when we eat off pattern at a different time, the body starts trying to develop a new circadian rhythm. That's why if you normally don't eat late at night and then all of a sudden you eat late at night, you probably won't sleep well. It's because all of a sudden you're having this huge surge of oxyntomodulin. What does this have to do with traveling? Well, when we're traveling, we are automatically off pattern, and our body's having a really hard time resetting. And it usually takes a number of weeks before our body can reset to a normal circadian rhythm. But oftentimes, we're not traveling for that long. We need it to reset faster. Well, studies are finding that when you fast, you make it so that when you do eat, you have a stronger surge of oxyntomodulin. And this surge of oxyntomodulin is basically going to make it so that your circadian rhythm resets faster. So you get more out of your travel and you get less weight regain, less inflammation and everything like that. The other thing that we have to factor in is our overall gut biome. Okay, so there are other studies that take a look at intermittent fasting and our gut biome and how that affects our circadian rhythm. So they took a look at mice that were intermittent fasting. Okay, I know mice are cute, but they're not humans, so we can't always compare apples to apples, but being honest here, it's a pretty cool study. Okay, intermittent fasting mice ended up having a stronger surge in the genes that help regulate a circadian rhythm, and it all had to do with the fact that their gut biome was just going through a different pattern. Okay, so when we fast for a period of time and then we eat, we kickstart this whole process that resets our circadian rhythm. Long story short is travel, and when you do travel, do whatever you can to fast during your travel period, and when you break your fast, make a concerted effort to break your fast that would be at a time that you normally would not be eating. Even if you went 6 hours ahead and your dinner is falling at the same time your breakfast is, try to push it out a couple hours so that your dinner is still falling at a completely random time for your body's clock. It will help you, I promise. One of the things that I recommend doing when you travel is have your food ready to go. Now, I don't mean like having a bunch of Tupperware prepped and all this stuff. You can do that too, but realistically have your keto snacks, have your fasting snacks, have that stuff squared away so then when you do get to the point where you want to break your fast, you have the right foods available and you're not just falling victim to what's on the plane or what's at the airport. Be prepared because breaking your fast is the most important part of the entire intermittent fasting protocol. If you guys would like, I did create some really interesting keto boxes and fasting boxes through Thrive Market. So down below, you'll see in the description, there is a link to Thrive Market. Thrive Market's allowed me to create these intermittent fasting boxes so I can put my favorite groceries in there and you can get them. So basically, Thrive Market's an online grocery store, delivers food to your doorstep. It's super, super convenient, super easy. And it just works really, really well for intermittent fasting because you can get Thomas's recommended grocery box without having to really think a whole lot about it. So anyhow, definitely check them out after you watch this video. Now, let's go ahead and let's move into the next one. The next one I want to talk about kind of goes hand in hand with the travel, and that's for the business person. Okay, the business person, and I can attest to this, absolutely, positively should practice intermittent fasting, and it's probably why so many business people are doing intermittent fasting right now. It gives you the wiggle room to be able to have the client dinners and the things that you need to have to not totally just blow your physique, right? Okay, take me for example. I was in the corporate healthcare world. I was trying to lose weight. I was going on my own health journey. I didn't want to look like a complete buffoon just sitting there with a glass of water and an air sandwich. I wanted to actually eat something. So intermittent fasting gave me that flexibility. It was actually an interesting study that took a look at this. Took a look at 32 individuals, alternate day fasting, so people that did intermittent fasting every other day, versus a control. They found that the group that did the intermittent fasting could eat whatever they wanted, have as much wiggle room as they wanted, and they still lost 5.2 kilograms more than the control. And they lost more fat, and guess what? They maintained the same amount of muscle, but all while reducing their C-reactive protein levels by 17%. Now, if you are someone that is in business, you're gonna have high levels of C-reactive protein because it's the inflammation marker. You're stressed out, it's gonna happen. So you might as well lose some inflammation along with the fat. And hey, why the heck not? Maintain some muscle too. Okay, so it gives you the wiggle room. Not saying you should just eat whatever you want all the time, but that wiggle room is awesome. Okay, it gives you the flexibility, and that's one of the biggest reasons I got into it in the first place, is it fit my lifestyle. So if you are in business, you are missing out by not giving it a shot. The next one, parenting. Now, you might think that parenting is the opposite of business, right? I've talked to guys out there that'll say, "Oh, my wife's a stay-at-home mom, and she doesn't really work while I go to work." Hate to break it to you, but she's probably working just as hard, if not even harder. And yeah, I'm just gonna tell you, parenting is business. It is work. And the point is, this all falls into the same category. Not because it gives you the wiggle room, but because it gives you the black and white ability to either abstain or go for it. And what I mean by that is, if you're making a grilled cheese sandwich for your kiddo, or if you're making something that maybe you wouldn't eat, that wouldn't fit, it's so much easier to just say, hey, I'm not eating until dinner time tonight, and then have the flexibility to enjoy dinner with your family and not feel like, kiddo wants mac and cheese, dad wants mac and cheese, I want to be able to have some mac and cheese too, and I don't want to just have to watch my waistline and be the one eating chicken and broccoli. You can have your mac and cheese. Just maybe you should have it like lentil pasta, chickpea pasta, maybe some healthy stuff, not just traditional cheesy mac, right? But the point is that you can enjoy your life a little bit. It just gives you that same wiggle room. It's along the same vein as in business. But I like just being able to just declare abstinence on food during the week. So if I'm watching my son, it's easy to want to snack because you're sleep deprived and everything just sounds good because you're just running ragged, you're pulled so many different directions, you just want to run into the pantry. It's like a sport, going to the pantry, just grabbing something to eat really quick and then running back to the playroom. It's just easier to just say no. Just say no. The last one that I want to talk about is people that have active jobs. Why? Because people that have active jobs or people that are in like a restaurant or they're waiters are going to get such awesome benefits from intermittent fasting. Why? Because you're active, especially if you're in a culinary setting. If you are a waiter, and I've been a waiter before, and I feel like everyone should do some time in food service, to be completely honest, it's so easy to grab a little piece of bread here, not off someone's plate. I'm talking about in the back of the kitchen, okay? You're not gonna ask someone for their bread. The point is, it's so easy to munch, and then you're constantly spiking your insulin. Just fast. But here's the cool thing. If you allocate your fasting period to be towards the time that you are most active, you are exponentially going to improve how much fat gets utilized. So simple example is, if you're a waiter, try to make it so that your shift falls during the latter half of your fasting window. That way you're already fairly deep into a fast, and it makes it so that while you're moving around, running around like crazy, you are burning pure body fat. And then you can break your fast and you can have a little bit of fun, right? So anyhow, this breaks it all down. Now remember that I do have videos that go into a lot more detail on specific things with intermittent fasting. The buck doesn't stop here, so I do want to make sure you check out my intermittent fasting playlists. Make sure you check out all the IF videos that I've got because you're not going to want to miss out. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.